Welcome to the Snowbird Investor Way, where we explore what it takes to create your dream cross-border lifestyle, living and investing amongst the sun, sand, and palm trees of Florida, even if you're not a U.S. citizen or permanent resident. I'm your host, Coach Roel. Marcia Van Wart, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Excellent, excellent. So as a quick sort of reminder, so you are a full-time real estate investor, currently residing in Orangeville, and you were a law clerk prior to that. You recently quit your job. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
And you have an affinity with Florida, which we'll get into. So was there any other sort of background info that I failed to mention, at least at this point?
Nothing major, just mother of three. So I have two kids in university, one in high school, and just, at the point in my life where I'm trying something new. So real estate is the new adventure, I guess.
Excellent. So tell me a bit about your journey up until this point. You've got a property in Florida recently, and then you also quit your job recently.
Yes.
So could you kind of expand on that background?
On the background, sure. I started getting into real estate investing, I guess, full time, you could say, almost about 3 years ago. Was buying some properties first tried to in Ontario, but as we all know, it's very expensive around here. So sort of moved out to some other provinces, went out west, bought a couple properties, and then from there decided I really wanted to get into real estate investing full time. So decided to quit my job in June, had closed on a couple properties out west. And then at the same time, my son goes to school in Florida. So he's been there for 2 years. And when he was looking for a rental, they were crazy expensive. So I was like, well, I should probably own a property so he could rent off me with his roommates. So that's what we did. We looked for a house and purchased a place in Florida, and kind of right around the time that I quit my job so that I could go down to Florida a few weeks. So I was probably down there 4 weeks in total last year, just getting the place ready for the boys. Yeah, so
Excellent.
That's kind of how that came about.
And your first foray into real estate investing, for context, when did you acquire your first property, and how long did it take you to get to that point?
Sure. I acquired my first property actually probably going on 6 years ago. And again, that was circumstantial. So my parents needed a place to live. They had to leave their rental. So with two of my brothers, we decided, again, like they've been paying rent for years and years. We're like, why not pay us their rent? So we looked for a house and put them in a house with another unit in it so that they could afford the rents. And that's really how I stumbled into real estate investing to begin with. And then from there, I was like, this is fun. I want to do more of this. So sort of about 2.5 years ago, joined some programs and started really learning about how to invest in properties and own properties and rent them. And so that's kind of how I got into it originally.
So from your first acquisition at one point, 6 years later, which brings us to approximately last year for you to quit your job.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very healthy time frame, right? A lot of people think, oh, I'm going to go and attend this real estate webinar, get for free information, and then 2 months later, I'm going to quit my job and be financially free.
Yeah.
But that's not the real world.
No, it's
right?
not.
Bring me back over those 6 years. What was going through your mind as you got your first property? You kind of stumbled upon it with your parents, and then you got a second property. Like what was changing? And all the while you're working your regular 9 to 5-ish job, right?
Yeah.
So what was going through your mind during that time?
Definitely, I really, really enjoyed I love properties. So just like looking at stuff, and the thought of owning properties and renting them is I really enjoyed that part. So I really liked that. And I wanted to get into owning some more. And I was so I'd been at my job for 20 years in the same office, same place. And it was just getting to the point where I was kind of getting bored of my job, of doing the same thing for so long. And also just the fact that my kids are older, they're gone, and it was convenient when they were little and being there. But as a they're getting older and they're gone, I was kind of not liking the fact that you had to ask, right, for time off and explain why you wanted to go here or do that. So it was just time for me to, I really, really wanted to find something different so that I could do my own hours, right? Like plan what I
Mm-hmm.
want to do when I want to do it. So my decision when I did quit actually was also to try to get into some wholesaling. So I've
Mm-hmm.
given myself kind of a year to really sort of build up a wholesaling business, and that's also what I'm doing. So I've got some rentals, trying to get some wholesaling going, and also want to try and do a fix and flip in the next couple months. And also I'm looking in Florida for something like that as well. So
Mm-hmm.
I've got a few things going on, trying to.
Yeah, and I'd love to get into more of that. We still have a good amount of time, but before we jump into all that, kind of do you have a philosophy as an approach? Did you have like a picture of how, the next milestone, my life will look like this? Like, what was it for you? Are you more the person that's just like, I'll wake up in the morning, I already know what I need to do with my next 1, 2, 3 steps? Or do you have like a longer term vision? Like, how do you help me understand how you visualize that?
How I visualize that. Um, like in terms of where I want to go with it. So
Yeah. Do you think 5, 10 years out, or do you just that you need to find an off market deal as soon as possible and then just deal with that? Like, what's your approach?
got it. For I kind of go based on the year. So I know for this year specifically what I want to accomplish. So this year specifically, I want to at least have one fix and flip done where I just to learn it, get my hands dirty, get on there, be on site, figure it all out, get it done. With the plan though, eventually that I want to pick something up to do a fix, but then keep it for myself to rent it out. So I do want to build a portfolio, a bigger portfolio. So that's
Hmm.
kind of what I'm working on. I also would love to have some property, STR type property in
Short-term
Florida.
rentals.
Yes, so that I can stay there as well. Like my plan eventually is I want to be there in the winters. I don't want to be in Canada in the winters anymore.
Why is
So
that?
just why is that? I really hate snow. I hate cold. I just I don't know. I'm looking outside at the snow right now, and it does nothing for me. And also the fact that there's no sun. I find it very depressing. In
Yeah.
December, January, February here, it gets very no motivation. Where I
Yeah,
find
and it's okay. I want to give you a safe space to talk about that because I was there too. My parents moved to Toronto. I had just turned one. We came from a tropical paradise in the
mm,
Philippines, and then grew up on the mean streets of Scarborough, as they say, and eventually got married and had my own family home. Still have a family home there in Mississauga. So I grew up, and you're preaching to the choir here, but some of the people who will be our audience, either watching this or listening to it, uh, I want them to feel a resonance with you, that they're also not alone. So feel free. What was your frustrations? What was your hope about real estate investing, about investing in Florida? Like, you have free reign to kind of give your thought process to share with others.
perfect. Perfect. Yeah, so it does stem a lot from just not wanting to be here in the winter. I love Canada in the summer, but not the winter. And I've been to Florida a number of times, and I just love the fact that there's sun, warmth. I don't have to worry about bundling up every winter in boots and coats. And like, I find that just exhausting. So
Hmm.
I'd like the thought of being able to just throw your flip flops on, go for a walk, get outside. Like, I love the outdoors. So I just like to be outside when it's warm outside. So I just want to be able to be, yeah.
Approximately when did you start feeling that? Like, as
Ooh,
a kid,
years.
even my kids, they're 9, 7, and 2, and they're like, "Oh, I want to live in Canada because they get to play in snow." But of course, they
Yes.
don't realize that the stress doesn't come from playing in the snow; it's from having to commute in the snow and having to do
Yeah.
errands in the snow and all that. But when did it start weighing on you? Like, the luster of cold weather and snow on the ground is kind of getting old on me. Do you remember when that happened for you?
I would say definitely in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Prior to that, it wasn't too bad. So, again, if you do snow activities, it's fine. I used to ski and stuff, but I'm just not interested in any of that anymore. So, I just prefer beaches, sun, warmth, and yeah, I'd be quite content to have that all year long.
Hmm. So can you remember when you had the audacity to think, maybe I could actually do this on a regular basis, like more than just a
Probably.
week at a time?
Yeah, not until I got into real estate investing. Before that, I probably never, like, it was a dream, but it was never a dream that I thought would actually happen because it just seemed far-fetched to, oh, I'm going to go live in Florida for the winter. Like, that just didn't seem possible. Or if it was going to
Hmm.
happen, it was going to happen when you retire, like way, way into your life, right? So
Yeah.
when I started doing the investing, and people were talking about like getting into the right communities of like-minded people and just hearing what other people's dreams were and what they're actually working towards, you kind of realized, oh, I actually can do that. Like this can be for me as well. I can do this sooner than later. I don't have to wait till I retire from my job and I'm, 65, 70, whatever. Like I want to do this now. And another part of it for me, especially, is because my son is in school in Florida. So he's been there 2 years. My other daughter is actually, so in Canada, she's out in Nova Scotia in another province in university. So I was getting to the point where I'm like, I want to go see my kids. I want to be able to just use real estate investing as a vehicle that I'm making money and I can go see my children wherever they are. Or if they decide to stay, like for my son, he doesn't want to come home. Like he's like, I want to figure out how to live here. And so for me, I'm like, well, if you're going to be living there, I want to figure out how can I come see you and work from home, but actually come visit you and stay for time and hang out. So really that's kind of where all my thought process was going, was it's a lot of family wanting to be able to go where my kids are, wanting to be somewhere where it's warm, and knowing that it is a possibility. And if you like work on it and find the right strategies for yourself, you can make it happen.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really cool. I think it's something that more people need to hear about, which is why I'm so happy and grateful that you came here to share that story of how you're doing it. Because there's many different iterations of it, but what I've found too is that there's a lot of different um, interpretations. Right, one big common element is the ability to be able to generate an income that is non-location specific,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you working at a traditional marketing job, for example, where I've heard these days now you have to go in a few days a week. A lot of companies are re-implementing that,
Yeah.
which is nice that it's not the full 5 days a week for some companies, but they're slowly mandating, at least Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, you got to come into the office. Mondays and Fridays, you can work from home, which gives you a bit more flexibility. But then there's also uh, some people I've interviewed too that are fully remote, and therefore they don't necessarily have to have a job, um, or sorry, a property, an investment property where they're
Mm-hmm.
going to, because they could spend in after-tax dollars, which brings up a whole other topic of, are you going down as a consumer expense or are you going down as a business expense? And I know you and I have some conversations in some previous training classes about that. Have you thought of it in that context at all?
Yeah, like personal or business type thing. Definitely.
Yes.
So I've again, like that's something else that was a huge learning curve. So I had to yeah, figure out how did I want to structure this and how did I want to go about doing this. So I've interviewed probably like 4 different lawyers, 4 different accountants, just trying to understand how do you buy property in the States as a Canadian? How do you make a business happen? So I've kind of finally come across someone who's guided me. So we're just in the process of getting incorporated and doing it properly. So as a Canadian, you want to be very, very careful because what the Americans tell you to do is definitely not what you want to do. So you just
Hmm.
want to make sure you have the proper structure in place. So I'm just
Right.
actually in the process of getting all my corporations set up so that I can start it more as a business. So
Hmm.
that's how I want to go forward, is
And what
putting
would
it
be
through.
your, for to say 5 years from now, or even 3 years from now, or less? What would be the ideal like vision of how you would be operating your businesses? whether it includes Nova Scotia as well or your other Western. So paint that picture for me. Dare to dream. What would that look like for you?
Dare to dream. Definitely. I think I'm completely going towards the US, like investing. So I'm kind of done investing in Canada. I really would love to own some short-term rentals in Florida, definitely, possibly some other states. I'd love to get my wholesaling business up and running. So that's kind of a learning process right now as well. So we're just really, really working hard at getting that going, so that I can be able to be wherever I want to be. I could be at home here in Canada. I can be in the States. I can be any state really and still run my business. Like that's kind of my dream. And I do love working, but I love working when I want to and from my house. So, or wherever I am. Doesn't even have to be specifically my house here. Yeah, just that
Right.
flexibility.
Would you always be keeping your residence in Canada as like your primary residence, or are you thinking just becoming a global citizen?
You know what? I've actually really thought about that recently and talked to my husband about that. So he still has a job here that he loves, and he's probably still at it for another 6 years, probably. But I do mention that a lot to him. I'm like, we own property, so I don't really feel I need to own my own house anymore right now. Right now, anyway. So there are times that I'm like, maybe it's a good time to sell and take this time when the kids are, especially when my youngest starts university. It's a good time to maybe go out and sort of explore different areas. Like I would love to be able to go live here for a month and somewhere else and just try out different areas of the world, quite honestly, and still be
Yeah,
able
that
to
sounds
work.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What would be outside of the destinations you already mentioned? What would be your first destination to
Oh,
explore?
I would definitely love to explore the Netherlands. So my parents are from the Netherlands, so that's somewhere I've always just wanted to go. Europe, just more visiting and traveling and just really seeing stuff that I haven't seen. I love history, so definitely stuff like Rome and yeah, there's so many places that I would
Yeah,
love to be
I
able to
bet.
just pick up and go.
So what changed? Why do you think that's coming about to the forefront for you now as opposed to 10, 15 years ago when you were happily working away at a regular job?
Oh yeah. Probably to, especially a few years ago, working at my regular job. My children were little, so you had to be here taking care of them. And that was always what I was told, right? Like, get a job and it's secure. And it was always like good to work somewhere for a long time. And it's kind of funny because now I actually tell my kids, yeah, no, don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
try things, experience things, change. Like, change is good. Being in the same place isn't always the best thing for you. And I feel like I've really grown over the last couple of years since I've kind of gotten out of my comfort zone and started dreaming and knowing that, you know what, you can get to those things you want to do if you put the work in and you put your mind to it. I don't know, surround yourself with the right people who are doing the things to get to where you want to go so that you can learn properly too. Because there's a lot of work involved too. It's not just, oh, just go buy this, do that. Like, yeah, it's been a lot of learning over the last few years that I've had to put into all
On
this.
that note, what was like the biggest aha moment for you that it's like, okay, yeah, we'll get into real estate and I'm going to be rich in a couple of years, or did you ever think that, at what point did you realize this is actually going to be a lot of work, but I'd rather this kind of work rather than the other kind of work? Do you recall that transition moment for you?
Probably especially when we got my parents' house because we had to do some work in there and just being kind of on site, doing the work, painting, cleaning it up, changing cabinets around, and we made like another unit in there. And I enjoyed it. I really loved it. I didn't mind being in there doing that work. And it was sort of,
Mm.
I'd rather do this than sitting at a desk in my office, quite honestly. So I think it was just a difference of sitting at a desk all day to actually a hands-on type of job. So to be able to have sort of a mix would really, like, it just excites me to be able to be up and about doing things, but also a little bit of desk job. But yeah, I don't know, just kind of trying out those things and picking up some rentals, getting the rentals going and realizing that, yeah, I just enjoyed it.
So you're playfully, you're one of the weird ones who actually like getting your hands dirty on the renovations.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that is a rarity. That's great. For me, I don't like lifting a hammer. I don't like doing any of the renovations and stuff. But to relate to your story a bit too, is as I think you might recall, I was a Canadian. I'm still a Canadian certified financial planner,
Mhm.
traditional financial advisor. You know, pay down, get a mortgage, pay it down, save for the long term, maximize your retirement contributions, all that stuff. And when I would ask people their top three goals in financial goals in life, invariably it would be retire early. That's usually number one. Retire early, prepare for children's education, and pay off my mortgage.
Yeah.
We're pretty much in the top three. And I'd heard people say that so many times, and theoretically, the only tool that I had was, okay, you want to retire early? Then tighten up your belt, uh, reduce your expenses, and save as much as possible. Maximize your contributions, and then maybe someday you'll retire at age 60 instead of age 65.
Right.
And it was just a math game, but it didn't hit dawn on me that there's another way, right?
Mm.
You don't need to be a
Mhm.
millionaire to live the millionaire lifestyle,
No.
which is what you seem to be have touched upon. The millionaire lifestyle, I believe, is about managing your own time, being
Yeah.
in control of your own time, and choosing the projects that you choose to work on. Because they say, right, if you love what you do, never work another day in your life.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
if you love your job, hey, don't let anyone tell you that that's not the way to go because you're enjoying it, right?
Mhm.
But you and me, we didn't necessarily enjoy the job anymore, but wanted
Right.
to have a bit more flexibility,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So the big pie in the sky, uh, do you ever see yourself retiring? And I kind of mentioned that in air quotes a little bit, but because that also requires a definition of what is an individual definition of what is retirement for you. So do you ever see things in that context? Like, someday I am going to retire and this version of retirement would look like this. Or do you consider yourself retired already since you quit your traditional job?
It's a really good question because, yeah, I kind of feel like I'm retired, but I'm also trying to be an entrepreneur. So I'm also trying to start up my own business. But I just getting into all this stuff, I can't even imagine like the thought of being retired, sitting in your house and I don't know, watching TV all day or having nothing to do. Like that just right now, that does not even remotely interest me at all. So yeah, I think my thought of retirement is now I love doing this. So I just want to keep doing the real estate side of things and looking for places, flipping places. Yeah, I don't know, getting more short-term rentals in different areas of the world, maybe even, right? So that you can bounce around from them. That would be my
Hmm.
dream.
So you
No,
don't ever see yourself not doing this, at least at this point in time?
no, no.
Yeah.
I feel like I need something to do. I think I'd be super bored if I was just had nothing to do.
I
And
think
in
I'm going to
this way,
write
it's
another book that says retirement is overrated, something like that.
right. Because this is kind of like I feel like it's a bit of a win-win because I don't know, I want to keep my mind busy and myself busy and doing things, but yet you don't want to be stuck to a 9 to 5 job. So you kind of get the best of both worlds if you kind of control your own destiny in a way. Yeah.
Hmm. So, let me give you a for instance. If you were to give a piece of advice to your younger self, choose any point in time or pivotal time in your journey, in terms of just getting started before you got into real estate. Like someone who's listening to this is thinking, it's this Marcia lady. She's just like beyond. It's amazing what she's doing right now. I can't even imagine quitting my job for goodness sake. What loving, gentle advice could you give someone at that point who wants to get to where you are now, but is like still in the traditional world?
I really like for myself, if I could go back to my younger years, I wish I had been more daring, quite honestly, because like that's what I try to teach my kids right now. They're in their early 20s, and I'm like, you know what? You've got your whole life ahead of you. Like, you don't have to be pigeonholed to anything right now. Take the time to really go out there and try things, and failure's fine. Like, as long as you learn from it. If you try something and it doesn't work, figure out what didn't work and do it again. Like, that's kind of the advice I would give myself if I could go back, is
Yeah.
stop being so scared. Just try it. Like, what's going to happen? Nothing.
Hmm.
You might fail.
But can you address, there are some, it's easy to say when you're on the other side, you're kind of out of the matrix and you see you're out of the traditional paycheck sort of thing. But what kind of sort of safety measures, I guess, could you say to put in place as well that would allow someone to be a bit more daring? Any thoughts on that?
When you're first starting out, that I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how you would structure
Well, you
that.
still had your job.
Yeah.
You didn't quit your job right away,
I didn't. And
right?
I was able to quit my job though also because of my job. Right? Like, so because I had been there for so long, I had RSP money that the company had put aside. So I was able to kind of quit with the intention of also having a little bit of that to help me out as I'm building
That's
some
great.
stuff.
And I would love if you feel comfortable to share
Yeah.
whatever you want, but I'll share first. Is when people ask, like, how did you retire at age 37, Roel? Which is weird because I'm only 27 right now, right? But it was a few years ago, so I'm turning 50 this year. My goodness! But I quit financial services as a division director when I was age 37, so like 13 years, almost 13 years ago. And it wasn't that I had a whole bunch of properties with passive income that replaced my salary or my regular job income. There was a transition period
Yeah.
where I had a house. We didn't have kids yet, so we rented out our basement. I had a rent to own up in Collingwood, Ontario, that was cash flowing really well. I had a spouse who had no interest in quitting her job, so she was helping out with some of the expenses. And then I also had a book of business that I could sell back to the company and receive a passive income for a short amount of time. So all of those put together allowed me to say, you know what, at least for probably a good 3-4 years of just being frugal, I can be a full-time real estate investor and devote 50, 60 hours a week to something that I wanted to do. And so whenever somebody would be gracious enough to give me an audience about that, like you just did, that's what I explain to people. You don't need $10,000 a month net from your rental properties in order for you to quit. So what can you say about that time period where you're like, you know what, got a couple properties, I got my day job, got some savings. How did you have that? I guess I'm assuming you had a conversation with your husband as well. It's like, I think I'm looking to quit. Is that okay with you? Or I have a plan. What was going through your
Yeah.
mind at that?
Yeah, no, definitely. That was a big part of it, it was to the point where, again, I was kind of done with my job and I wanted to try something new. And those are the things we looked at. Like, same thing. He likes his job. He wants to stay doing his job. So that was good because that's our constant. I was really liking the real estate part of stuff. So we talked about it and I'm like, you know what? I'd really like to give this a chance. Like, let's take 2 years, because I've got the RSPs sitting there, and quite honestly, I can't do anything with them. They're sitting there. They're not really enough there to retire me. So if I'm not working for a couple years, I can draw from the RSPs as I need to. We can live a little frugally. So, like, cut out some things. So we did. We cut out, example, I had a house cleaner when I was working full time. So I now no longer have a house cleaner. So I'm cleaning my own house, right? Like, so just kind of going through everything we had, removing some things we didn't need. I also actually took in, so because 2 of my children are in school, I took in a student. So I have one of my bedrooms rented, my daughter's bedroom. So I'm taking in
Excellent.
a bit of funds that way. And And then I have another empty bedroom that I'll probably do the same thing next year. So just looking at different ways that you can bring in some funds to kind of cover a little bit of what I lost in what I was making. And to be fair too, right? Like I was in a job, it's a desk job, it was an office job as an assistant. It's not like I was making six figures. So for me, it was a bit easier maybe to replace that kind of income. So
Yeah.
that's how we went about it. Yeah.
That's ironic, isn't it? It's have you ever played the Cash Flow 101 game?
I haven't, and I really want to. I've heard so much about it.
Well, I'll tell you another fun thing about aspect about that too is I played it many, many times, and when you draw the secretary card or one of those, like the janitor card that actually
Yep.
doesn't have very much income, ironically, those occupations are able to get out of the rat race much faster than the doctor, the pilot,
For
the
sure.
lawyer, because with a greater income comes also greater
Greater
expenses,
expenses. Yeah.
which is very difficult. But when your expenses are very low, you don't need a
Mhm.
whole lot of passive income or other sources of income to be able to then free you up from that job.
Exactly.
So you're
And I
playing the
felt
cash flow game in real life.
pretty much exactly. And I felt confident enough too that when I left, that I'm like, you know what? I feel I have enough experience behind me that if in 2 years or something things really aren't working out, I don't think it's that big of a deal to find a job. But I don't actually want to go back to that, so I don't want to put that in my head. But it's there if it needs to.
It's there. It's a distant plan C or D,
Yes,
potentially.
very
Yeah.
distant. Hopefully never touch it. Yeah.
Well, your story is very inspiring, Marcia. How can people, if your story resonates with someone listening to this, how can people reach out to you to chat more, to network with you?
Yeah, for sure. Actually, I have a LinkedIn profile. So just under my name, Marcia Van Wart. And in my LinkedIn profile, there actually is even a link to book a call. So if you want to talk further with me, I love talking real estate. And yeah, I would love to meet new people and talk about people's adventures themselves.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for sharing your story. And I'm sure this is not the last we'll hear from you.
No, definitely not. Thank you.